Hi everyone, I'm Cheyenne Malone. For decades, fraud has plagued the retail automotive industry, posing challenges and threats to both dealers and consumers. But rather than waiting for it to happen at your dealership, Kanchana Sundaram, Experian's Senior Director of Product and Innovation for Automotive, says you should be preparing yourself now. Welcome.
Hi, Cheyenne. Nice to be here.
Glad to have you. So tell us about fraud happening within retail automotive today. I know there's been a lot of changes and, it seems to be getting more sophisticated, really, when we see it happen.
That's absolutely right. With the AI technology that's available, it's readily in the hands of sophisticated hackers these days. So it really puts dealers and lenders and consumers at risk for these AI tools to be leveraged by fraudsters who are essentially bad actors stealing people's identities, going out and targeting dealers to be able to get access to these high-priced vehicles that are out there today.
And Kanchana, tell me some of the pain points dealers are facing in this area.
Well, I always have so much admiration for dealers. They're such a complicated business, and typically you've got a lot of small to medium-sized dealerships that are at the heart, of towns and cities that they're in. They manage, from supply chain to merchandising, and now there's this complicated area of fraud that they need to navigate. One of the biggest pain points for dealers is that high turnover of the sales team within the dealership. So we want to really have solutions that are available for dealers that are simple to use, simple for the consumer, trusted by the consumer, very easy for salespeople to use. Time is money, and we don't really want to have dealers adding more into that already overcomplicated 3-hour process at the dealership to buy a car. So we really want dealers to have access to really simple, lightweight solutions that are going to help protect them as well.
And you also mentioned AI earlier. How is it impacting fraud? Is it helping dealers help them to detect it possibly?
I think that's the advantage of AI is that, what is extremely manual and cumbersome process of, sifting through a credit file or being able to look at, manually, it's very difficult to look at hundreds or thousands of sources. AI really helps dealers and lenders today to be able to detect patterns of fraud. And that's really what helps us to predict where there is a potentially suspicious situation or a potential threat of fraud occurring to dealers. And so solutions that are really going to be able to have access to all of those gold sources of information, information that is the correct information as well, and be able to look at, what kind of patterns are happening across these fraudsters who are leveraging multiple trade lines, who don't have an intent to pay, who are cultivating synthetic identity fraud, fraudulent identities that they use to target the dealers.
And helping with prevention, really, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They are looking at preventing fraud by really putting themselves in a place where, those analytics that come back from the deep machine learning that's built into some of the solutions, you really need to have access to those types of AI solutions that understand where there is first party fraud that could occur, which is, somebody who has a good credit profile and they might look like a good candidate purchasing a car, but really they don't have an intent to pay, or someone who's stolen another person's identity. You see we have cases where consumers have called into a dealership and said, hey, I didn't interact with you and purchase a vehicle from you, but I see that you've pulled my credit. So dealers kind of are learning after the fact where they've been targeted. And we really want them to build awareness about solutions that are going to be proactive versus reactive.
I mean, it's mind-boggling some of the scams that people can try to attempt to get away with, but obviously dealerships equipping them with things like AI to help prevent them in the future. What are your recommendations for dealers to prepare just for types of fraud-like situations like we're talking about, some of the examples you gave?
Well, if you think about security, let's say you're putting in security in your own home, think of that age-old, ADT sign, that protective sign that, you put in your window or on your door. That's something we really want to encourage dealers to have, which is processes where a sophisticated fraudster engaging with it will know, oh, I'm going to get caught if I have to engage with these types of digital solutions. So you see a lot of fraud happening with the adoption of these digital retailing tools, the pandemic sort of accelerated that within the auto industry. And so fraudsters are really able to kind of take advantage of not being in the dealership while they're purchasing these vehicles. So those digital retailing processes need to have these fraud detection tactics built into them. So when the fraudster is engaging with your driver's license scanning or being able to take a selfie of themselves, those two things need to tie to each other and talk to each other. So you're validating that, yes, that the person that you're interacting with does own that identity and it is a valid identity. Some further forms of identity verification that are important for dealers to leverage are things like device intelligence. So more and more you're seeing that a phone number is really part of that consumer's identity. And so, Experian as the credit bureau is able to validate that, a person's phone number does really belong to them. And we've seen that being used across their trade profiles in history. So those are kind of tools that dealers can leverage today to better protect themselves as part of that retailing process.
I feel like nowadays you can dedicate a whole separate department just to fighting fraud in a lot of different industries, really. Any final thoughts for us, Kanchana?
Well, you mentioning dedicating departments to detecting fraud, and that's really some of the overhead that's being taken right now to try to understand where these situations are happening, because it is a complicated process to, like I said, try to see these patterns and look at multiple sources to really verify that that identity is a valid identity and that the person does, is legitimately trying to purchase a car and continue to pay for that car. So I think that what we want to do is really partner as Experian. We want to partner with lenders. We want to partner with dealers. We want to partner with, these number of sources of information from law enforcement to really make that easier so that dealers and lenders don't need to have huge departments dedicated to fraud. And that is, in itself becomes a bottleneck as you're trying to purchase your car. And, we want that car buying experience to be as fun as possible. It's really enjoyable to go out and buy that car. So, these processes need to be, like you said, AI makes them seamless so that the consumer doesn't really have to feel the pain of it and can still enjoy their process while the dealer is able to see, those analytics and determine where they need to take more action.
Well, I appreciate your insight on all of this today. Kanchana Sundaram, Experian Senior Director of Product and Innovation for Automotive. Thanks so much.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for watching CBT Now exclusively on CBT News. And remember, we're streaming on Roku and Apple TV now.